Welcome to Agile to Agility podcast with Milan Bajic.
Major show alert!
The very first value we wrote is individuals and interactions.
Let's take this another level.
It's a real pleasure to be here at Agile to Agility. I'm going to be talking about the state of value stream management. My name is Helen Beal. I'm the chair at the Value Stream Management Consortium. That is one of my roles. I'm independent, so I have a number of other roles. I'm Chief Ambassador at DevOps Institute and do strategic advisory services for several companies as well. Through my career, it kind of feels like it always led me here. I was working with system admins and developers for a long time. So kind of that led me into DevOps and automated deployment. And DevOps was my entry point as a consultant in DevOps for many companies around the UK and Europe and the Middle East, where I kept on seeing the same sort of challenges over and over again, and found that DevOps and value stream mapping were not quite solving what I needed them to solve. So this is what led me here, and I'll explain some more of that later and how this came about. So the Value Stream Management Consortium was stood up in March last year. We're just over a year old. We're a not-for-profit trade association. We're a members association. And the reason I got interested in starting it up is I went to the DevOps Enterprise Summit in London in 2019 and met up with a lot of companies there that were talking about the new thing, a value stream management platform, so TaskStop and ConnectAll and Plutora. And I started working very closely with Plutora, and at DevOps Institute, we had a skill up day, our very first one in April 2020 on value stream management. And I found myself chatting with loads of individuals who felt like me, really passionate about value stream management, helping unlock some of the problems we were facing, particularly around metrics and the repeatability of techniques like value stream mapping. So I spoke to my colleagues at Plutora and suggested we build a community around this, and this is what we've done. So we're now just over a year old. We've got 8 major vendors as leader members. We've got over 200 influencer members from many different enterprises and consultancy houses, and we're doing lots of work, lots of huddles, and we'll talk more about the work later. But we're talking about the state of value stream management today, so I'm going to focus mainly in on the research, but just to give us some context what I'm talking about. As I've said, my entry point into value stream management was very much via DevOps, so relatively recently, but we can trace the history of value stream management way back into Ford in the early 1910s. Charles Koppner wrote a book about installing efficiency methods, and then of course we had Toyota and TPS, Toyota Production System, and all sorts of work that went on during the 1950s that led us into lean and lean in manufacturing in particular, and then lean leached out into the enterprise. I did not have room on this slide for all of the books, but I should call out books like Value Stream Mapping from Karen Martin, Mike Ostling, of course, as well, that have been really influential in this. But I will draw your attention to a couple of things here. One, the internet happening, because that has changed what we can do around value stream management, and also the first Forrester wave that was published back in 2018 around value stream management. And in that, Forrester came up with this definition that value stream management is a combination of people, process, technology. We love that. We love the people, process, tools adage, right? And it maps, of course, we're very familiar with mapping, optimizes, visualizes, measures, and governs business value flow. So all of this is as it has been for decades. But what comes different is through heterogeneous software delivery pipelines. And this is one of the things that's different. And this has happened because of the internet, which has triggered the thing we call digital transformation. We're not here to debate that term today, but that is happening. And DevOps and cloud are key enablers of that. And all of these things link together. One of the really rewarding, joyous parts of the consortium is that whilst I was in that DevOps bubble, in that DevOps community of people prior to the VSMC, what that's really done for me is opened up the network into all the people that have been living deep inside lean manufacturing, systems thinking, all of these different areas. So it's really widened that network up for me. And we love value stream management because we love value flow, or we love flow in DevOps. That's the first way. If you're familiar with the 3 ways in DevOps, flow, feedback, and continuous experimentation and learning. And we learn about them in the Phoenix Project by Jean Kim et al. And the Phoenix Project, many of you will probably know, is almost not a sequel is the wrong word, maybe an homage is better, to the goal that was referenced in that introductory video. And once we optimize flow and realization, I'm going to talk more about realization later, we get that customer experience. And if we've got great, happy customers, it means we've got higher organization performance. So the bottom line really around value stream management is focusing on customer experience. And part of that is how fast we can deliver, and part of that is what we can deliver. Now, I didn't call this book out on that slide about the history, but in 1995, James Martin wrote The Great Transition. This was just about the time I was graduating from university and the internet was sort of coming together. And in it, he gave us a definition of a value stream. And he said a value stream is an end-to-end set of activities which collectively creates value for a customer. And as was said in that marvelous introductory video, we can't think of things as individual stairs. It's a staircase. It's such a great analogy, but all of these pieces that collectively create value matter. There are lots of different definitions of value streams. We have a course, I'll tell you more about it later on, or I'll probably mention it quite a few times, at the Value Stream Management Consortium, which is our Value Stream Management Foundation course. And we include a number of definitions in there, as there's lots from safe and lean IT and IT for IT and all sorts of different sources of different definitions, but they all kind of come back to the same thing, that there are multiple steps, they need to be seen together, but most importantly is the customer. One of my favorite definitions actually of a value stream is that anything that has a customer is a value stream. I always like to say also that anything that creates a product or delivers a product or service is a value stream. And James went into a bit more detail in this as well in The Great Transition. So he said about the value stream is being concerned with all the activities from start to delivery of results and the confirmation satisfaction. And this is one of the shortfalls I think we've had in DevOps previously, is we've kind of stopped at release and we haven't actually been that good at getting feedback. But I'm going to show you some visuals later, which will help you understand my thinking about why this makes a difference. In value, the value stream designers search for ways of achieving outrageous improvements in critical measures, such as speed and cost and quality and service. And I love this idea of value stream designers. In fact, one of the things we're seeing in our research at the Value Stream Consortium is a proliferation of roles around value streams. And it's not clear yet whether we're talking about value stream teams and whether they replace what we think of as product teams, these multifunctional autonomous teams. But there's certainly more and more value stream engineers coming through, flow engineers. We're even seeing a chief value officer role appearing more from like an elevated CFO role, but it's definitely coming through into the value stream thinking or the value streaming that people are doing. And then, of course, this focus, intense focus on customer, and that can be external or internal. It can be business, it can be consumer, and it could be, of course, the citizen. So if you're a government, your customer could be your citizens, and our concern is how to delight them. So that was back in 95. Now, we do have a leaning at the Value Stream Consortium towards digital value streams. We are quite new, so we didn't want to try and do everything immediately. And we do believe that digital value streams are different. And as I've already said, we do believe that there is a renaissance happening in line with Forrester's view, that it's happening because of what digital transformation has triggered, particularly around thoughts like Agile and DevOps. So digital value streams are quite different, and this slide tries to explain why. And basically what it's saying is that common activities, we do design and development, we do production delivery, and we split our time to do that, to go from concept to cash, or to hopefully to customer delight rather than cash. And then in manufacturing, we spend a lot of time on the production delivery and much less time on design and development. So we often use tomato ketchup as an example here. So we don't spend that much time designing it, but then we produce and deliver millions and millions and millions of units of it. Whereas in software, what we're doing is actually spending much more time proportionately doing design and development, because we have these concept of long-lived products. So many of you will have hopefully at least heard of, if not read, Mick Kirsten's book, From Project to Product. And you'll know that we're moving away from waterfall towards agile, away from project to product. And when we move towards long-lived product, what we're actually doing is creating enhancements. And those enhancements are quite small, and we only generally make them once. So we spend quite a lot of time and designing and developing that one thing, and then a small amount of time producing it. And part of the reason that is small is because we've invented DevOps tool chains in the last decade or so, 12 years or so. So we're doing a lot of continuous integration and delivery and automation at that point. So there's lots of different examples of value streams. You've got your mobile apps and websites and sorts of different things. I've value stream mapped APIs. I've value stream mapped projects that are becoming products, all sorts of different things. One of the things we're aiming to do in the very near future at the consortium is look at digital value streams kind of outside of the DevOps toolchain and outside of these obviously digital apps. So for example, getting closer to the COTS, like that's commercial off the shelf packages, things like Salesforce, getting into the marketing and sales value streams and really leveraging the digital tools that they're using there as well. So at the consortium, one of the things that we use is this implementation roadmap. In fact, I'm just writing our second State of Value Stream Management report just at the moment. I'd hope to have enough for a sneak preview for you today, but we're going to save that for our members. But we are, the only sneak preview you probably get today is we are going to be arranging this report around the roadmap. And in fact, the Value Stream Management Foundation course I mentioned is also arranged around the roadmap. You start like an improvement charter, you start with the vision and setting your long-term goals, and then you start the work wherever you are. And the point we're making there is if you haven't done DevOps, it doesn't mean you can't do value stream management. If you haven't embraced lean, it doesn't mean you can't do value stream management. But the first thing you need to do is identify those value streams. So I've given you some definitions of what a value stream looks like today. Where this gets complicated in most organizations and enterprise organizations in particular is we've been siloed for so long, we haven't looked at things like that. And while we've been siloed, we've created monoliths and we've created systems that are heavily dependent, heavily integrated and tightly coupled with each other. And so are the value streams. So a lot of the work that we do in the enterprise at the moment is trying to understand value streams interdependency. And this is what some of the Agile at Scale frameworks are trying to deal with as well. The next thing we do is organize around that value stream. And when you do value stream mapping for the first time, what often happens is you get a group of people in the room that have never been in that room together before because they've never really recognized that they've had that association with each other before. They've not looked at the system end to end in that way. As I said a few minutes ago, I'm not sure if the future includes organizations that are entirely arranged, organized, documented around value streams, but it's a possibility. And I have worked with some banks who have consciously arranged around value streams within the last 5 years, which is actually quite a long time ago to be thinking that way in this world. Then we map. Now, mapping is very interesting because it was absolutely my entry point into thinking like value streams. And what we discovered during the research at the consortium is it is for most people. If people are mapping, they are so much more likely to be thinking about flow. And I'll show you some data on that in a moment. And we often, when I say value stream management to people, a lot of people respond to me about value stream mapping. But for us, mapping is a component step of implementing value stream management. It's important, but it is just a sub-step. There are advantages and disadvantages to mapping. I'm going to go into those in a little bit more detail later. And then we start getting into the things that we haven't been able to do before. So connecting parts of our DevOps toolchain, if we're talking digital value streams, that enables us to understand the flow and really leveraging data around what the feedback is, what the response is from customers. So our next steps are our classic Scrum steps about inspecting and adapting. So we emphasize in quite some detail the skills needed to do things like inspect, when it should be done, how often it should be done, and why it's important to use data to do it. And this is one of the big points about why mapping is limited in some respects, because the way that we do value stream mapping means that we get people in a room or a virtual space and we share opinions. Those opinions are startlingly accurate in my experience of doing mapping, but they are just what we feel and what we've experienced, and actually backing them up with data is extremely useful. And once we have done the automation, we then have that data available to inspect at any time. This is one of the biggest disadvantages I found with mapping, was getting people to repeat it. I would do it with people and they would be so enthused and inspired after the couple of days that we'd spent doing it. They'd be really bonded as a team. They'd had so many kind of wow moments and epiphanies that they'd leave the room so enthusiastic about their hypothesis backlog that we built with them and all the changes they were going to make. And then they got back to the desk and that horrible BAU started to hit them, and they never kind of really got around to delivering on those experiments, and they very rarely got around to revisiting the map. But if we've automated it and we have the data available to us at any time, it makes that inspection activity that much easier. And just before I move on from that slide, actually just one other point to make on here is that when I was building this implementation map with the team in the first place, one of the discussions we had was about that people process tools that we talked about earlier, that's in the Forrester definition that we all live by every day, I think. And I'm a big proponent of that. I'm a big proponent of the cultural aspects of DevOps. However, there is an argument, and I was really pleased to see just after we published the first State of Value Stream Management report last year in July, immediately one of the community wrote a blog post about it, and one of the points they made in that blog post was that actually you can switch some of these steps around. So for example, you could connect before you map, and that might feel like you're putting the tools before the process, but it could actually really support and augment the process that you go through when you map. So just a point there. Another thing that we do very strongly at the Value Stream Management Consortium is commit to this idea of duality, so dimensions of VSM. A lot of the value stream management market at the moment talks primarily about flow, which of course is important. We care how fast we can deliver the new things our customer wants to them, but it's also really important that we understand what their experience is. So for me, flow is about outputs, and it tells us a lot about the value stream health. But what's most important is the realizations and the outcomes of the work that we do, and defining that outcomes in terms of customer experience. And I have another slide later from the research where we'll look at what value really means. But really, we're talking about flow being friction-free, this continuous steady stream of value, but realization is the fulfillment, and it's when our customer experiences what we intended. And it means that we have to be very empirical about our approach. We must write into a user story our benefits hypothesis. Why are we doing this? What do we expect to happen? When are we going to inspect what happened, and how are we going to respond? So in last year's report, we discovered some really exciting correlations. We discovered that certain value stream management practices are more common in high-performing organizations, as you can see in the chart on the left. Particularly if you use mapping, if you measure value, if you measure flow, and if you measure outcomes. All of those were more common in the top performers we had in our research sample. We also asked quite detailed questions about what sort of team people were in, and we've kind of bunched the team types together here. So we've got project teams, value stream teams, and platform and enabling teams. And we gave quite a few definitions and explained what the definitions meant. And some of the definitions were from team topologies. So for example, a value stream team and the component team and things like that. But what we discovered in the orange dots there, so the orange dots can also be our product and feature teams, basically the kind of long-lived product teams, that these people were more likely to be measuring flow metrics. So that tells us that when we are acting as that long-lived product, remember, we're moving from project to product, we are more likely to be thinking about these value stream metrics like cycle time and WIP that was mentioned earlier as well. So Gartner quite boldly a couple of years ago said that by next year, 70% of organizations will use value stream management to improve flow in the DevOps pipeline, leading to the faster delivery of customer value. Now, I always very much enjoy Gartner's forecast, and this is one that we're particularly interested in. Now, what it doesn't say is that people are going to be adopting value stream management platforms, and this is one of the things that we look to as a big indicator. But we hope to see, and we're certainly in the early data, we're seeing more and more movement on this, and certainly the narrative that we're hearing from the research analysts and more people are looking to value stream management as the thing to help them optimize as they move forward. So the thing to ask yourself about all these buzzwords, I mean, there's so many buzzwords in our industry, aren't there? There's SRE, system thinking, design thinking, ITSM, SAFe. There are so many different things, so many different frameworks, methodologies, thought processes we can follow. The thing to really ask is about the outcome. So if you want to know how long it takes you to deliver to your customers, and you want to accelerate that and have insights into where you can make improvements and be able to collaborate end to end and have conversations that are data driven and be able to trace your work end to end, then that's you wanting to do flow, and that's you wanting to do value stream management. And if you want to be able to estimate the value that your work is going to deliver and build hypotheses around it and understand how much your work actually realized, and amplify and shorten those feedback loops so you can find out faster, then you want to do realization and you want to do value stream management. So I talked about mapping as a sub-step of value stream management. And once you've identified that value stream and you've got the people in the room, then that's the time to do your mapping. And what we discovered is that when people do mapping, so 90% of respondents that do value stream mapping do inspect flow. But people that don't, 80% do not inspect flow. So the relationship between practicing mapping and understanding and measuring flow is undeniable and really important, which makes it kind of essential to think about mapping as a practice early on in your value stream management journey. But there are problems with it, as I alluded to earlier. It is a great bonding opportunity. People really love the way it aligns them. They love the empathy it makes them feel. They love how much they learn about each other's jobs and the pain that they go through and what their challenges are. But not everyone does it, and they don't do it for lots of different reasons. And these actually haven't changed too much in the newest report, but some people don't know what it is. So hopefully things like this are really helping. A lot of people don't know how. That's fine. You can self-teach using books like Karen Martin's Value Stream Mapping book that I mentioned earlier, or our course gives you a high-level introduction as well. Or there are people like me and within the community here, I'm sure, that know how to value stream map that can help as well. And it is, I think, relatively easy to teach as a facilitator. Most of the work is done by the people in the room. Not having resources and sponsorship and aligning and getting stakeholders together is a real cultural problem, and it's really about prioritizing improvement over delivering new things. And this is not a problem exclusive to VSM, it's a problem across the world, I imagine, but certainly across all technology teams that I've ever worked with. Because technology teams are still often treated as order takers, we're still often just asked to deliver new stuff, and not given that chance to find the time to save time, to invest in the future. And this is a leadership problem that we battle every day. I mentioned one of the other big problems I have with mapping, though, is the revisiting of it. And the chart on the side on the right here is telling us about how often people are doing it. And I actually found this quite heartwarming when I saw it before, because you're seeing nearly 16% here doing it once a month, which is amazing, nearly 13% doing it once a quarter. So this is great that people are wanting to practice it more. They're finding lighter ways of doing it, and the automation definitely helps here. Now, one of the other things is, where do people get the data? So as I've said, traditional value stream mapping really is people in a room talking about what they feel and what they experience. But when we start trying to make that value stream visible, just like we were talking about earlier, where people obtain the data about the value flow, lots of people are still building dashboards or integrating their own tools or building a tool themselves. And this speaks to the philosophy that really we should invest in things that are competitive differentiators. Anything that is commoditized or someone else has built for us and is available in the market, we should just buy and pay maintenance fees on it. So really we should be looking to use tools that are available out there. And I should also mention lots of people are doing manual collection, which is obviously extremely painful and time consuming and prone to errors. But what we really want to get to is a place where people are have got a single tool that is aggregating, by the way. So it is, I'll explain that later, is pulling the data from several other tools, but making it very easily available and accessible. So this is the value cycle. This is the system in our digital world. And for a long time, we've used the infinity loop in DevOps, which I've never been a big fan of because it propagates the separation between dev and ops. So I've used a cycle for quite a long time for my DevOps toolchain, but we can see the value stream like this as well. It kind of visually, I have a problem with it because the stream is kind of linear, but actually when we combine the way we want to think about value streams in DevOps, we do want to think of them as this continuous loop. So we're starting with ideation at the portfolio and backlog level, where we're setting the vision and goals and we're aligning to all the component parts, however we've defined them as epics and features and product backlog items. And then we're starting to build, so we're creating code or composing code perhaps from artifact repositories, we're incorporating other artifacts, controlling versions, and we're building our code in a trunk-based manner. And while we're doing that, we're continuously testing, and not just for functional tests around unit integration and user acceptance. We're also doing non-functional tests around security and performance through several gates all the way to the route to live. And then in continuous delivery, we're practicing how to deliver in different ways. So we're using things like dark launches, and we're approving those changes and releasing and operating in the live environment, and then receiving feedback on them through monitoring and observability. And what we're learning goes back into the portfolio and backlog, and that could be a support ticket, or it could be a new feature, or it could be a reaction to something that we didn't expect, which is changing the way we want to deliver that widget. But we can lay our DevOps toolchain over this. What you're seeing here is a number of different tools. So you've got things like Jira Align and Confluence and Jira at the front, and then you've got JFrog as an artifact repository, and Git for version control and source control, and GitLab for CI, and Unit for unit testing, and Jasmine and Selenium for integration and user acceptance testing, and Sonatype for security, and then various different orchestration, support desk, logging, observability, and dashboarding, and feedback tools. So we can see now how we have these tools, how 12 years of DevOps has helped us build the value stream for our digital products, and we can see the flow of our digital products through our DevOps toolchain. And it enables us to do things that we haven't really been able to do very well before, like connect planning to delivery and get visibility into those cross value stream changes. So those dependencies, it becomes much easier for us to represent visually where we have dependencies across different products and services. And we can trace our user stories. We can build in continuous compliance through all of our gating mechanisms, through the automation of various checklists for change or release, whatever it is that we have. And we can manage those dependencies, because there is a tenet in DevOps where we say, don't manage dependencies, break them. And that leads us towards a loosely coupled future where things have autonomy so they can be changed without negative impact on other pieces. But of course, that's not something we can do with a click of a finger or a click of our fingers overnight. It takes a while to do. So the value stream management platform gives us the capability to manage them while we're going through that mechanism of breaking them. And it can show us where those dependencies are and which ones are causing us most trouble or most risk. So we can get those insights that allow us to optimize flow and inspect and adapt according to the data that we're seeing. So that's quite a lot about flow. Let's think about realization then. So it's still quite rare for us in this part of the industry to have automated insights into value realization. When we asked people if they measured the actual value realized by new features in the product, only 6.4% of respondents said always, whereas over a quarter of people said never, and 40.6 said rarely. So this is something we'd really like to swing much more towards the always. So everyone knowing that they're winning their winnable game, to use another phrase from Karen earlier. So we want to know that people are experiencing success. Success brings joy, and as you may have seen on my slide earlier, my mission is to bring joy to work. So 71.7% there, hardly ever checking the value of what they're doing. And then we asked people that were doing it when they do it. And this is a complex one. And when we build these questions, we build hypotheses into them, and we build kind of an ideal state. And in this case, our ideal state would be the answer continually. It's instrumented into the product or platform. So we could literally at any point look at a user story that was delivered and look at the hypothesis and look at the data that relates to the hypothesis that we had. But very few people are doing that at the moment. There are a couple in there that are also good at the end of the experiment. Of course, that's good. After a push to live, not so good, because we need some time for that change to land with the customer, for them to have time to interact with it and give us some feedback. At the end of the project, of course, not so good as well. This is one that we find very interesting to see who's practicing looking at the value. From an organisational perspective, and I mentioned this earlier, that we're still treated in technology as order takers, and the separation between IT and the business prevails, which is problematic when we think as a value stream, because we really want ideation and planning not to be separate from delivery at all. We want that to be completely smooth. So we asked people who their team reported to about value in their product, and as you can see, it's quite split. As I said, when we write these questions, we have a hypothesis, and we often have an ideal answer. In this case, our ideal answer was we don't. Decision is for our own decision making, which would be very indicative that the team is fully formed, end-to-end, multifunctional and autonomous. But as you can see, only 4.3% said that. So 19.5, the biggest answer, the business stakeholders or customer. And that doesn't really mean, we believe in this case, the kind of consumer customers, this is the internal business customer, it's not the users in the business. So it doesn't really give us that feedback so much with the people that are actually using the system. Now, this is one of my favorite topics, which we can boil down to what is value. And we can say things like value is in the eye of the beholder. We've spent a lot of time looking at this over the last year, me for a few more years than that. And one of the things that we're learning here is that people think of business value more than they think of customer value. So as you see, 28.3% here of the respondents talked about either revenue and sales or profit margin. And those aren't customer experience metrics, they are business value metrics. And for me, they're also lagging metrics. So they tell us about what customer experience was. I'm much more interested in the leading metrics that tell us about customer experience. And there's lots here around conversion rates, basket size and journey time and session time. There's lots here. NPS is a widely used one as well, which is quite controversial, particularly in the B2B world. And I prefer to think about reviews and referrals here again, because they're leading, not lagging. They're very indicative about immediate customer experience. If you love something and you write about it, take the time to do it, you must. And if you tell your friends and families they must use that product or service as well, they must really love it as well. And there, if you can cure that, you can have a great business. So in summary, the guidance of the report was really in these areas. So there is an opportunity for people to adopt to disrupt. It is still an early marketplace. The consortium's a year old. We're just going into the second year of our research now. VSM in this current form is new, so this is an opportunity to disrupt. You do need to make time to save time. I talked about that earlier, and it's not, as I said, it's not a VSM problem. It is a technology problem, possibly a global problem in every way, but in technology I particularly see this pain of people being asked to do new stuff all the time and not being allowed to spend any time on looking at how they do things and improving the mechanisms for delivering work. This is why we end up with lots of technical debt, which leads to unplanned work, and it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we have to learn to assign time to make improvements. Education, of course, it's, we should all be lifelong learners. We should aim to be dynamic or continuous learning organizations. This is part of the DevOps mantra as well. If any of you have listened to the audio project Beyond the Phoenix Project with Jean Kim and John Willis, that's the concluding point that they make. And I think it was Andrew Schaefer as well, is famous for saying, if you're not a learning organization, you're losing out to someone who is. This is another area that we must invest in. I've mentioned the course. I'm going to mention it again in a few minutes. And you can model your implementation. So you can use other techniques. We go into quite a few in the course around outcome mapping and dependency mapping in particular to help drive the vision. But the more you invest in improvements, the more you're going to improve. And there is a lot of AI coming through as well. A lot of this is about data. We simply have too much data for humans to handle on their own. So let's start leveraging the AI that we've got available to us. So as I've mentioned a couple of times, we do have the State of Value Stream Management Report 2022 coming. We're currently slating delivering that first week of September this year. If you would like a sneak peek, what you need to do is to become a member. There are other reasons to become members as well. I've mentioned the Value Stream Management Foundation course. We have an online version that myself and Steve Pereira, who you'll be hearing from later on, recorded, and that is a free members benefit to all of our members. It follows this the implementation map that I talked about earlier. So it's about 8 to 10 hours recorded. If you want a classroom delivered class, we can do that via our partner, the DevOps Institute as well. It's about 16 hours in class because there's a number of interactive workshops and exercises that go on as part of the classroom class. But we talk about the history and evolution, how to identify value streams, mapping them, connecting tool chains, metrics, inspection, organizing and evolving as value streams. So there is a code here, Agile to Agility 20, that will get you 20% off annual influence membership to the Value Stream Management Consortium. So I have a few minutes left. I can see there's quite a lot in the chat. So I thought I might take some questions if that's all right. I can see a question here from Katie. How much adoption of value stream management is there within higher education? That is a great question. And actually, we do have some data this year in the 2022 report on different industries. So we're going to be framing some of that in the report with particularly, or we have a government huddle as well. We have a number of huddles at the consortium. A huddle is just a term that means a group of members with a common interest that come together. It's just like a community of practice or a guild. We have one for consultants, one for government, and one for another team that I have just forgotten, but I might remember that. Are there any other questions that people would like to ask?
There's one that just came in. How can we simplify the introduction of organizing around value streams to introduce to executive business leaders?
That's a beautiful question, and you've really helped me, Donald, because you've reminded me of the huddle that I forgot about, which is our CXO huddle, which is absolutely designed to target executive business leaders. And some of the work they're doing with our learning business stream at the moment is to develop micro-learning. Some of you might have rolled your eyes when I said our course is an 8 to 10 hour course or 16 in classroom. So we're currently working on a micro-learning program, which will hopefully help with this. And I think probably trying to introduce some mini games where people can experience a value stream exercise in sort of an hour or two would really help. I've done a lot of immersive learning around DevOps before. I used to deliver the Phoenix project game, if any of you have come across that quite a lot, which is really eye-opening for leaders. I think, though, I'm just going to take a step back from the question and make a comment about leadership in general in terms of the context of the culture that we live in. We do, unfortunately, still live in a world that is kind of has the ghost of Taylorism in it, in that our enterprises are more often than not arranged as dominator hierarchies. We've got command and control still. And what we really need to do is get to a point where we have distributed authority and we have autonomy in the different teams. And that needs to be controlled and coordinated, of course. We don't want chaos. But this does mean that our leaders need to rethink the way that they work, and they need to think of themselves as people that help people discover improvements rather than tell people what to do and berate or manage, all those kind of things. So, question from Mark, are external supply chains given enough attention in our definition of mostly internal value streams? It's a great question, and a lot of the value stream mapping I've done has actually involved the external people, and I've not even seen them as external. I've seen them as a step in the value stream. So, for example, we've had external consultancies that have been managing SAP that you could see as external supply chain, and they've just been brought into it. We've had external parts, like we've had outsourced testing to Wipro in banks. And things like that, where people, we just bring them in. I just see them as, if you don't think of them as internal or external, just think of them as what is their step in that flow? What is their step in that staircase or in that loop? That really helps. As members of the Value Stream Consortium, you get access to the course that I've talked about. You get access to all of the huddles. You can join any of our value streams. You get early view on all of the research that we're doing. So as well as the annual research, we always also do micro research. So we did some quite recently on definitions of lead and cycle time. You can contribute to all of the learning. You can be featured in the members directory. You can write content for us. You can be involved in our webinars, all sorts of those different things. And when we are just about to announce, this is a sneak peek for you today, we're about to announce a conference, our very first conference. It's going to be called Flowtopia. It's going to be in Las Vegas in October, just ahead of DevOps Enterprise Summit. I will be doing the 16th and 17th of October. Members get a free ticket to that.